Hi, my name is Alex Ford, and I will be doing a book review / relationship synopsis over Oriana Fallaci, the journalist, the agitator, and the legend. This book is a biography of Oriana Fallaci, who is an Italian journalist. As the title kind of suggests, Oriana was passionate, stubborn, and a well-known person for most of her adult life. Oriana became famous for interviewing movie stars and then astronauts, and then eventually in her career some really controversial and polarizing political and world leaders. She also became a writer, and she was really well known for her really interesting, captivating interviews with these people. So Oriana grew up in Florence, Italy, and it was always a place for her that she could call home and a place that she could return to kind of during her crazy world travels. Growing up in Florence during World War II, her father was actually part of the Italian resistance that was fighting against the Nazis. As a child, Oriana would smuggle contraband to the resistance through Nazi checkpoints on her bicycle. So as you can imagine, kind of a wild childhood that kind of set her up for some really interesting dynamic relationships throughout her life. Kind of started this cycle of hard work but destruction. It's very interesting, so we'll get there. Oriana's mother was a very strong, smart woman. She was not very formally educated, but she really understood the importance of education and really instilled that into Oriana growing up, that her way out of, poverty and into a successful future was through education. And then Oriana's uncle was a famous Italian journalist as well, and so he really kind of influenced and inspired Oriana's journey and kind of helped facilitate some of those opportunities for her early on in her childhood. So as you can see, that childhood that she had sort of set her up for a really interesting life path, I would say. So in terms of relationships, Oriana had 3 great loves in her life. The first was a French writer, and this was a super passionate, obsessive, possessive love that she had for this man. And unfortunately, those feelings of passion weren't returned in the same way. It led Oriana into some really destructive habits. She actually became pregnant with her first child, and about 4 or 5 months into the pregnancy had a miscarriage, which ended up leading to a suicide attempt. So as you can see, not a healthy relationship, unfortunately for her. And then her second great love was with a Brazilian journalist. They met in Korea while they were both reporting over the Vietnam War. Again, a really all-consuming, passionate, kind of crazy love. And this time, the love was returned. However, this journalist was married, and he was a devout Catholic, and he refused to get a divorce. So this affair continued for many, many years. But then Oriana eventually ended up just totally cutting it off, ending it because he refused to leave his wife. And then her third great love was with a war hero. This was not quite as passionate, but it was built more on the foundation of like a hero complex. This man was super brave, super outspoken, very daring, but he also suffered from really bad PTSD, and he actually ended up being assassinated because he was like this crazy strong presence. And their relationship, like I said, was definitely not based on love, but more of this hero complex, and they didn't live together, but they really supported each other emotionally. They kind of understood each other in a way that people did not. He died while they were married, and Oriana never regretted that relationship. She was happy that they were kind of connected for the rest of her life. Another really interesting relationship that she had was a friendship with an astronaut whom she interviewed. They were very good friends for years and years and years until one day, through corresponding by letter, they had a disagreement about politics, and then they shared a phone call that was really intense, over the top, where neither of them were kind of willing to budge or see the other's point of view, and then they never spoke again. Oriana didn't even go to his funeral a few years later. So pretty wild, just like cut off. Her working relationships, she was super harsh, super demanding. She really was the first like woman war reporter. So she had to like pave her own way and really make opportunities for herself. Some people loved her for it, some people hated her for it, and she didn't really care either way. So throughout her whole life, she was kind of burning bridges, forcing bridges, just kind of paving her own way and not really caring how she got there. She had this desire for truth and justice and really did anything she could to facilitate these conversations. She, like I said, had this continued pursuit for truth and justice and really kept putting herself in these traumatic situations and just kind of continued this cycle of heartbreak and trauma. And then she had impossibly high expectations on herself and on her counterparts and on her romantic relationships, and she just really could never learn to forgive people or to see things in a different light, and just kept cycling through these really traumatic, crazy, destructive relationships. This led her to being physically unwell most of her life. She was always in a very high stress situation. She smoked cigarettes like the most that you could, basically, and just really led to her being unwell at the end of her life. She was very isolated, and really, I would say for her most important takeaway would be learning to forgive and seeing and knowing that not everyone had the childhood that she had, and that set her up to perceive things in certain ways that maybe wasn't the most healthy. And she, I don't think she had super great coping mechanisms. So for her, just learning that forgiveness piece and being able to understand people differently would have, I think, saved her a lot of heartbreak and would have potentially let her live a happier life. She was super successful, but was never really happy. So, thank